and turn it over to you, Beth, and let me also spotlight you for everyone.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of me. Thank you very much, Hannah, and thank you to all of us for joining us. This is the first of a two-part conversation this week that will focus on text, and next week that will focus on images. There is no prior knowledge assumed in our conversation. I'm going to just pull up some slides here while we're talking. Let me bring those up, present. And full screen, present. Whoops, I've got too many things covering this. Present full screen, there we go. Hopefully you can see some slides now. So there is no prior knowledge assumed. I do see, though, at least one face here that I recognize of somebody who I know knows a lot about this topic, Mark. And so I'm going to encourage people, especially as we go along, nice to see you, to put questions. You don't have to wait till the end. So please, if you have questions, clarifications, what's going on, ask it in the chat, because there are people here who can help one another. I see people here from, I saw a USDR or USDS go by. I saw some digital service people go by. So I imagine we have some varied levels of knowledge in the room and experience. And I think, let me say right at the outset that these technologies are all brand new for all of us. There is no such thing as an expert. And we are all learning together. I will say right off the bat, this has nothing to do with the New York State Attorney General. That is a lingering logo from an old slide. The rest of the deck is all new, but I do not work for the New York State Attorney General. Let me dive in right here so there's no confusion. As Hannah said, I work with Innovate US and the GovLab and for the state of New Jersey. So we're going to dive in, but please feel free to keep the questions coming, and then we will have lots of time for interaction both this week and next week. So right at the outset, let me say that what you hear a lot of, obviously, in the news is stories like this one, that AI is going to destroy the world. We hear lots about the robot apocalypse. There's lots of discussion about ways in which AI is going to eat all of our jobs. I am coming at this as somebody who both has a foot in the academic world and a foot in government, as with a very kind of different viewpoint. Actually, I'm going to go, I'll say more about this in a minute, but I'm coming at this from the viewpoint, and this whole conversation is really focused on the idea that we can and should be using AI, I should say responsibly using AI, to do good things in the world, especially as public servants, to improve how we make policy, to improve how we deliver services, and to make our jobs better and easier. This is not about AI replacing our work as public servants, but essentially augmenting our work and making us better at what we do, better writers, better communicators, better creators, better analysts. And so our conversation this week and next week is really centered around helping you learn how to explore these tools for yourselves, how to use them for yourselves, understand what they are, and very much also talk through concerns that you might have about risks and such. So that's one of what we're going to cover. Today, we're going to do some basics on what is AI. And again, some of you may have some different definitions, which I invite you to share. And we're going to go in particular to focusing on use cases or examples of how we can use AI, focused especially on text and on writing. And next time, again, we will spend more time talking about images and visual content. I am sure in our discussion, we'll focus somewhat on risk today, but we'll have a deeper discussion next time when we talk about pictures. We'll also tack on discussion next week about risks. And about what it can mean to create an AI-ready culture, both for you and for teams that you might work with. I am starting from this principle articulated in the White House's most recent executive order on AI, that we can use AI, when we use it again responsibly, especially generative AI, to help us solve urgent challenges. It can make our world more prosperous, more productive, more innovative, etc. So I'm starting from this rather optimistic perspective that there's a lot of good we can do with AI, and that we should educate ourselves about what those uses are so that we can take advantage of the good things. Okay, that's so this is basically the starting point, and with that, I'm going to dive in. But there is more content, as Hannah mentioned. You'll find more video content on Innovate US, as well as additional workshops. And I will say, if you yourself or you know of people who should be teaching workshops like this, we welcome suggestions. We're always looking for people to teach one another and to share the skills that you have developed as innovators in government, whether it's at your own pace workshops like this, or live workshops like this, or at your own pace videos of the kind that we create. And we will be creating and have started on work to build an at your own pace multi-part course on responsible AI for public professionals that will launch in early 24. And we are in the process now of convening state, federal, industry, and academic of experts to help share their perspective and your perspective on what you think public servants need to know. So I mention this because since you're here, we're eager for your feedback. And if you're interested in being involved in that planning process, we would love to hear more from you. I am going to mention a number of different products today, and I am very happy to share and get into very specifics about how do I access these tools, where do I find them. These are not endorsements of any of these platforms. I use them merely as examples, and because they are widely available commercially in widespread use. So they might be tools you come across, they're tools that you should have access to. And again, happy to answer questions, but does not imply an endorsement of any one of these. I will say right off the bat, I can't speak to the issue of what is the policy in your state with regard to use of these tools. So, always consult with your CTO or CIO about what is acceptable use in your agency, or go ahead and try it on your phone or try it at home. And make sure that you play with these things on your own time. So let me start with a quick survey question and just get a sense of who we have in the room. These are the questions we're going to ask, but we're going to put it up as a Zoom poll. So Hannah, if I could ask you to launch that, I'd love to just get a sense of our kind of comfort level in the room.
Okay, it's launched, and I'm seeing answers come in. We have 55%. Okay, it's rapidly increasing. We're at 70% of folks who have answered. Let's just give it a few more seconds. All right, Beth, should I end and show the results?
I think you can. We are at, whoa, we have very good. I think so. Yes, go ahead and share the results. So as I expected, we have a broad range of people in the room, including some ringers, the all day long 6%ers, and that doesn't even include, I didn't even vote. But I'm going to ask the 6%ers to please help answer the questions for the 21%ers. So we have a what I would call a plurality here, 42% who are either in the never tried it or tried it but don't use it, and then a much smaller percentage of people who are in what I'd call the power user department. But again, we're all learning together, so it would be great to share what you're learning with one another. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll, or I'm gonna close the poll, or Hannah, I'm gonna ask you to do that, and we're gonna dive in. I will say as Hannah said, she's going to turn off the recording when we get to the Q&A. We don't publicize any of the questions here, so please feel free to, there's no question that's a stupid question, or no question that's too stupid to ask here. We're all learning together. So let's just start with some basics here. What is AI? And there's a lot of different definitions that are out there. I'm going to put up this one from IBM because I like to think about AI at its very simplest, simply as a set of data processing tools. These are tools that are really, really good at working with large quantities of data And we're going to get into talking about generative AI because that data can take a lot of forms. It could take the form of numbers, but it could just as easily take the form of text. So this ability to kind of comb through large quantities of data is essentially what AI is about. I think there's a lot of controversy around the term artificial intelligence because it suggests, again, a human quality. These are tools. And just as our brains are really good at recognizing patterns in information, just in the way that children are really good at listening to their parents speak and then learning those models and repeating them, and that's how we acquire language. That is really very much what's going on here, which is why we often liken artificial intelligence, or people will talk about it as machines being able to do things that humans can do. We'll describe it in those human terms. But I think that kind of creates a lot of unnecessary panic and worry about these tools that are really just about processing a lot of data. So machine learning, as it's sometimes called, which is a kind of AI that is this form of big data processing technology, has been in use for a number of years. And it typically works by, again, as it says here, training the computer to do a task with data. And those tasks usually involve some kind of exploration of the data or prediction. So I think the example is helpful. You might have seen this in Time magazine as one of the top innovations of 2023. The state of California has developed a system for early prediction of wildfires. And we know how incredibly dangerous and destructive wildfires can be. So if we can do anything to spot them earlier and avoid the spread, it's incredibly powerful and helpful. How do we do that? Well, we can do that by feeding a computer with thousands and thousands of examples of images of wildfires. And from seeing lots of examples, the computer then comes to recognize, aha, this is what a fire looks like. And then you can feed it new examples, new pictures, and it can say, that's a wildfire, that's a wildfire. And this essentially, spotting tools, these machine learning tools, are making it easier for the state to be able to predict and get resources to the site of a fire earlier. This is another wonderful project that's a public-private partnership funded by the DoD, by DARPA, called Traffic Jam, which does something similar. But in this case, it's many, many pictures of ads for escort services. And they use these pictures in law enforcement to train an algorithm that can better spot and identify human trafficking. So it's worth taking a deeper look at how they do it, but essentially it's just large quantities of data where we're training it on what we know to be an example of an ad for prostitution or for human trafficking, and then use that to spot other instances and send law enforcement resources to the site sooner and easier. Lots of examples of this in the healthcare context. There's a researcher at MIT named Regina Barzilay who has trained an algorithm by feeding it lots and lots and lots of examples of pictures of breast cancer, and then the algorithm now can therefore look at a new picture and spot an instance of breast cancer faster than the human eye, which is obviously having profound life-saving consequences. And there are lots of examples of that, fill in the blank, disease X, cancer Y, where we're using machine learning, this ability to process a lot of data to, again, spot, show it lots of examples of an existing case, and then it can spot the next one. Generative AI is a subset of machine learning. It's simply doing many of the same things, but instead of using images in what we're going to talk about today is text, instead of using data in the sense of numbers or data in the sense of images, the generative AI that you are familiar with from trying ChatGPT, or from you're going to try ChatGPT today, I hope, or Google Bard, or Claude, which comes from a company called Anthropic. This is just using large quantities of text. And then based on ingesting large quantities of text from the internet, it's then essentially just predicting what the next sentence should be. It's the same way I think about how a child acquires language. bears a lot of similarity to that, but that's really just what's going on under the hood. Again, these technologies are very new. ChatGPT has been around for a year. Anthropic's Claude, Bard, etc., even less than that. So we're all just learning together, and many of these things are evolving. Increasingly, you're going to see generative AI built in under the hood in other familiar platforms. So especially for people here, most of you are in government agencies, you're using Microsoft at your desk. As you probably know, Microsoft is the primary investor in ChatGPT. The company is called OpenAI. The product is called ChatGPT. Microsoft is the primary investor, and it is very much integrated now into the Bing search engine and into tools that you're seeing at your desktop. But also, regardless of what word processor you're using, if you are ever make a spelling mistake on your phone and it corrects it for you, that's AI. If you're using Google Translate to, talk to that family member in some other country, that's AI. It auto completes your sentence when you go to type an email and it says, "Oh, did you want to say this?" That's AI going on under the hood. Again, the ability now to process large quantities of language just makes it easier to do more of these kinds of things with language. Let me keep going here. And Hannah, I'll ask you to be on the lookout for anything going on in the chat. What's going on here with my slides are.
Sure, I'll let you know if there's any questions that need
There
clarification.
we go. Okay, there we just have people coming in out of the waiting room and lots of images here. Hopefully, let me close that. So for those of you who haven't played with it or seen it, I would encourage you to go to OpenAI while we're talking. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your computer. It will let you you do have to sign up, but for free, you can use what's called ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version. And you can go ahead and ask it a question and it will produce content for you. Here I asked it, what's the best pizza in New York City? And it gave me the following list, and it will generate content quite simply. And let me go forward here. It also works by voice, especially on your phone. So here, a little slow. Okay, you don't need to know the rule against perpetuities, but I wanted you to see that you can ask it things by phone and you can speak to it in multiple languages, and it will answer you in multiple languages if you ask it to, with a quite human sounding voice. So it will generate content both by text or by voice. That's what's known as multimodal. This means more than one mode. It will speak and it will write. When we're thinking about AI, I will just do a couple of more additional definitional things here before we dive into more use cases. It's not so important to know any of this jargon, but because you'll see a lot of these terms, I did want to mention it. AI is often described as either narrow or general. Narrow, what it sounds like, it does one specific thing. Here's that mammogram example that I gave you before, or another healthcare example, the Galleri test, some of you may have read about. It's another form of AI that's being used to do early spotting and prediction on a very large number of cancers with a single blood test. Pretty exciting advance, I think. But then there also is what's sometimes called general AI. And when we talk about a ChatGPT or generative AI, it is also general in the sense that it can do a wide number of things. It's not designed to do one thing. This is no more complicated than just saying that Microsoft Word or Google Docs can do a lot of different things. A word processor is simply something that's an all-purpose tool for working with text. Generative AI is an all-purpose tool, again, for generating text or for analyzing text that you can use for a wide variety of contexts. This topic of generalized AI, though, often gets conflated into a discussion about which we're not going to have today, about AI becoming smarter than humans. And again, the robot apocalypse, we'll save that for later. I want to keep going on what we can and should be doing right now with these tools, which are actually pretty stupid. and in many ways are just, I would say, a better version of Microsoft Word, a better version of Google Docs. They are just sophisticated word processing tools. I think I'm going to keep going here because some of this jargon is not that important. If you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer it, but I will leave in this one funny example because, again, it's a great one of where AI is going, because, again, when you feed it with lots of examples, it's really good at then spotting patterns. So you'll sometimes find, or your kids will be amused by these memes, the Chihuahua versus muffin, the Labradoodle versus fried chicken. AI, these are some of the tests that are used to help train AI. Can it tell the difference between the chocolate chip ice cream and the Dalmatian, between the muffin and the Chihuahua? It's almost hard for us as humans when it's a way of teaching. When you can tell AI, this is fried chicken and this is a dog, it can learn better how to tell the difference between the two. So we like to give it those hard edge cases, if you will. Okay, now I want to get into talking about some of the so-called use cases, which is a term that software people like to use. A better term is just examples, how we use and can be and are using AI in government. And that's where I really want to see what's on your mind and what things you're doing or would like to be doing. Now, as I showed you before, these tools are, as we know, really, really good at content creation. So here's another example here. This one I captured because for a friend going to Buenos Aires. What's the best steak restaurant in Buenos Aires? Like the pizza question for New York. It's really good at just fluidly and fluently generating content. And you see how quickly it can actually produce information. That can help us, obviously, to write things for our work in government. It can also help us to rewrite things. So, for example, to take something, a complicated government website, a complicated PDF, some complicated government speak, and we can feed that content into a Google Bard, a ChatGPT, an Anthropic's Claude, and ask it to rewrite content in a format that's simpler and easier. So here is what Google Bard looks like, bard.google.com. And I said, can you simplify this text? Simply typing in the text from that government website on the earlier page, and then it gives you the simplified version of the text. Here I said, hey, could you do the same thing, but give it to me at a 4th grade reading level? Maybe I'm trying to make content truly accessible for people who are low literacy, or for people who are non-native speakers, or in fact for kids. The AI can be steered, is sometimes the word that's used. The AI, generative AI, can be told the persona, the form, the level, the voice that you want it to adopt. Another big use in the content creation space, and I'll show you another thing about steering in just a moment. Oh, sorry, there comes my 4-legged assistant, not my AI assistant. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, she likes to mute the keyboard when she comes by. I think she advanced the slides. Sorry about that. So one of the big uses that I'm sure you're hearing lots of, and may already be in use in your state, is for the use of what is sometimes called a chatbot. Chatbot is just a form of generative AI where it is being used to answer questions. Those generative AI tools are often in use, those chatbots are often in use to answer public questions. And we saw lots of these even before. This predates a lot of the ChatGPT stuff. It's using other technologies, but used for customer service so that residents can come in, type a question. I think I have that on the next slide here. We use this in New Jersey for business.nj.gov. It used to be you had to call what's called the Business Action Center. You called them between the hours of 9 and 5. You were put on hold. You got a human. Those humans are really smart, but there were only a few of them doing the job of answering questions for people wanting to start a business in New Jersey. Now I can type in my question 24/7. And the way this chatbot works, there's different kinds of chatbots. Some will give you an answer right away from a knowledge base. Sometimes they will log a question, and then a human will participate in answering it, and that will help to augment the knowledge base of the tool. I'm going to go back one more here. This is an example from Maricopa County, Arizona, where they're using a chatbot not to answer citizen questions, but to answer employee questions. So they have an internal knowledge base where they have a person at a call center in their court system can use the knowledge base to get an answer to their question and then be able to relay that to a resident. These tools are getting easier and easier to build. About 2-3 weeks ago, right before the explosion of OpenAI and all the things you read in the news about the firing of Sam Altman and then the rehiring of Sam Altman and all of that debacle and the resignation of their board, right before that, they put out a new set of tools that allows anybody to effectively build your own chatbot called the GPT Builder, which may be something we'll explore more of in our next session. So one way to think about the content creation aspects, I think, is the way you would think about having an intern, or more like 100 interns. Generative AI is really, really good at helping you to do research. It's not as good as the web at finding a specific source. So if you're looking I need this document, this statute, this policy, Google's going to be your best bet for that. Or maybe depending on what it is, maybe it's a Lexis or a Westlaw or another kind of database. Finding a specific thing it's not as good at. But as we'll talk about in a minute, it's really good at kind of being able to synthesize and summarize content. So if you had, for example, a very long document and you wanted to say, help me to summarize what's in this document, or help me to understand what are the action items in this document, or help me to look at these 3 documents and see the similarities across them, or help me to generate a sample, this policy or that policy or this contract. It tends to be really, really good at those kinds of things. And the more that you tell it what information to look at, the more accurate the results are that you get. So a lot of the things we worry about with so-called hallucinations or just the AI making stuff up can be contained and controlled when you guide it in terms of telling it what the content is that you're looking for. And those questions that you're asking, that guidance that you're giving, is referred to as a prompt. So you're prompting or guiding the tool towards the answers that you are looking for. And obviously, I will say this now, I'm going to say it 10 more times, and we'll say it when we talk about risks. You always want to double check your work. You always want to, you never, in the same way that if you gave an assignment to the intern, you would check what they did, or at least I hope you do. You really want to be sure to check what it's giving you. Now, hopefully some of you, as we're talking, are playing with GPT 3.5. There is a paid version of the tool called GPT-4. GPT-4 builds in a lot of other what are called plugins. It will work with other tools at the same time, including the ability to browse Bing at the same time. And when you use that, it will actually go out and source. It's browsing the web. You're telling it, I put in here, I'm interested in research on the impact of social media on youth and mental health. It goes out and does the research. It comes back with the resources, and it actually does give you footnotes. So again, you can go and check the sources. You can see where things come from. It's like a really good research assistant, and it will give you those sources, again, helping to mitigate some of those issues of hallucinations. I'm going to skip over this example, except I do want to show you, without going into the details of the example, I do want to show you another one of these products. This one is called Claude by Anthropic. What's really nice about this is that for free, you can do this now on GPT-4, the paid version of ChatGPT, but Anthropic for free allows you to upload a document. So here is an example. This is an actual research question that a colleague was working on. A colleague wanted to look at all of the, so I will give the example. Actually, this was all the transcripts of Supreme Court confirmation hearings. And they wanted to see all the mentions of abortion in all the Supreme Court confirmation hearings since 1970. So you can upload that file that exists as a file, thanks to a group that's collected that, and it will find all the mentions for you. You can tell it to run comparisons, etc. Here is like, show me, analyze all this data. It's a vast quantity of information. What do you spot in looking at these things? So it's a really, really good research assistant. And like I mentioned before, you can steer it, you can guide it, you can get it to create content in the form that's right for you. So coming out of the government world for a moment, because this one is so popular, some of you or your children, if you have them, may use a tool called Khan Academy. Maybe using it in your family to use 4th grade math or learn reading or writing. It's also great if you want to take an art history class. Khan Academy is now building in AI under the hood to help personalize the lessons. So learns from your learning style and then personalizes the lessons for you. If you're learning a language like me on Duolingo, Duolingo is doing something very similar. Again, personalizing towards, this is in French and Spanish, doesn't do it with all the languages yet, but they're experimenting with using ChatGPT to personalize the instruction, the examples, the exercises that it gives you. Okay, and then let me take off my headphones so you can hear this one. I think you should be able to do this. Let's see if this video works.
Greetings, good sirs. May I have the pleasure of knowing your names?
I'm Matt, and that's Vache.
A pleasure to meet you, Matt and Vacha. Shall we commence our journey?
So this is, let me try to go back to the slides here for a moment. This is the tour robot at Boston Dynamics Robot Company. They have loaded ChatGPT into the robot. And if you watch the full video, which is quite fun, they have given, in each room, the robots have different personalities. So one talks like Indiana Jones, and one talks like Valley Girl, and one talks and they have different accents. And let me see if I can, oops, that's my email. Hold on a moment. Let me try to get back to my slides here. There's always the problem. We stop sharing for 1 second, and I'll go back to them. And why don't we see for the moment if we have any questions in the chat while I go back to the slides here.
We do. So we had a question, which is, when you ask AI to do resources, do you need to cut paste each piece of research into the text box, or can you offer links to information it should use?
So yes, and you can do both. Depends on what you're trying to do. If what you want to do is to say, help me to simplify this text. Just this morning, I took a blog post that a colleague had written, and I pasted in the blog post, and I said, help me to get rid of the jargon in this and simplify it. It was full of government jargon, and it was too hard to understand, and it was very helpful at offering some rewriting. In many cases, though, you can, Google Bard in particular is really good if you just give it a link and you say, go look at this. Again, because ChatGPT with the Bing integration can search the web, you can go tell it to go look at a particular document. With GPT-4 and with Anthropic, you can upload a PDF. You don't have to, doesn't have to be on the web. It could be a PDF that you load from your own computer. So you can actually give it the information. So if what your goal is to analyze a page, then just paste it in. If your goal is to analyze 100 pages, then you want to upload a document. Any other comments or questions at this point?
We have one more question at this point, which is, if the AI program learns my style and adjusts to it to make it a more personalized experience, how do I prevent and recognize when it sends me into a rabbit hole?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think it's one of the great benefits of these tools that it can learn, that you can steer it and guide it. With this new GPT builder, which maybe we'll do just a workshop about that, you can very specifically tell it, like, answer all questions in this format. Or let me give you an even better example. My kid uses ChatGPT to quiz himself in physics. So he's in 9th grade physics, and he says, ChatGPT, don't tell me the answers, only ask me questions. I'm trying to learn 9th grade physics, be my tutor. So he has personalized it to only to ask questions instead of giving answers. So it won't respond with responses. You can just tell it to stop doing that. So that's how you avoid the rabbit hole. But if you forget that you told it to act like Indiana Jones, or you forgot that you told it to be a tutor, you can undo that at any point. I think the question of, how, I will say, and again, all of these tools right now are owned by private companies. They are not very transparent in how they work. I cannot, and they're changing in how they work. So how they respond to us, what data they collect from us, how they, whether they kind of give you a different answer than it gives me because of who we are and what we've written in before. We're going to have to look carefully at the terms of service. We're going to have to look carefully at how these things evolve. And we have to speak up if we don't like the direction that things are going in. So that's a toe in the water of a much bigger topic. But it's important to say at the outset that these tools are already very different than they were 6 months ago in terms of how they respond, the kinds of content that they create, etc., because of the user feedback that they're getting. Okay, I am, in the interest of time, I'm gonna do like 2 or 3 more minutes of this, and then we're gonna open it up to more questions. So Hannah, maybe we can start to gather questions, and because I think this is a 60-minute workshop, not a 90-minute one. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
so we're on a short calendar, so I have a lot more to show you, so I would definitely just encourage you to come back for our second half next week. And I'll leave this question up there, but I will make it rhetorical for the moment in the effort to get to some more of what I wanted to show you. And then we'll have some more conversation. So I think the most powerful thing about these tools is not the ability to create content, but the ability to analyze content, which I've already referred to a lot. But the sexy thing you always hear about on the news is like, oh, it can write you a poem, or it can write a jingle, or it can sing a song. The real uses that we're looking at, I think it's all about analysis of content. The analogy here that I find helpful, or the example that I find helpful, is your phone. When as I'm sure whether you have an Android or you have an Apple phone or something else, it often says to you, hey, like, would you like to see all of your pictures of your summer vacation? Or would you like to see all the examples of dinners that you've been to? It's really good at going through all of your photos, what we might call unstructured data, without being told what to look for, and finding those patterns and saying, hey, here, I've created this album for you. So that's kind of some of the most powerful stuff. So here, I've asked ChatGPT that steak restaurant in Buenos Aires content. It's now visiting the web. It's telling us here which websites it's going to. And again, it's deciding for itself where it's going to go. In this case, we're not telling it where to go. And it's going to go now and not just generate content, but it's essentially analyzing a number of different websites. And it's coming back and giving me that set of recommendations of here are the places you should go eat steak in Buenos Aires. By the way, the dollar is very strong right now. So, it's a good time to go eat steak in Buenos Aires. I'm envious of my friend who's going there on vacation. It is not just good for analyzing content in the form of words, but increasingly governments are turning to generative AI now to be able to look at computer code, especially those legacy systems we're all familiar with that are built in COBOL, that are hanging together by chewing gum and, MacGyver style with a bobby pin and chewing gum. And to be able to analyze the code and spot places that it can modernize and rewrite the code to speed up the process of modernizing government systems. Text, again, is data. So we can use it increasingly to ingest large quantities of content. In this case, this is a research project by some law professors or political scientists that are doing content analysis on large quantities of legal documents, like Supreme Court hearings in this case. but we can use it to be able to do other kinds of analysis. This is one I love. It's another legal one, but I particularly like this one because this is researchers who ingested a large quantity of examples of Supreme Court arguments and were able, therefore, to spot that male Supreme Court justices were interrupting Supreme Court female justices very, very, very frequently. As a result, the Supreme Court changed its rules last year to change how questions get asked and answered. Now, justices ask questions one at a time in order of seniority, and that change was put in place because of this research, because AI was used in a way that we couldn't have done as humans. So I want to point this out because as much as we're worried about bias and discrimination with AI, it's also really good at helping us to spot bias and discrimination in a wide variety of contexts because it can allow us to process a large quantity of data. Really, really good in terms of summarization and transcription. Again, this conversation is being recorded and it is being transcribed, and then tools like Zoom, like Otter, like Woodpecker, these are names of different products, will summarize. And if you see this discussion right here that I posted, not only does it summarize, if you look right here, it unfortunately says of the two people speaking, Beth spoke 62% of the time and the other speaker spoke 38% of the time. That's pretty embarrassing. And it's really helpful because it causes me to stop always being the professor and maybe to shut up sometimes. So I'm going to pause here because these are lots of examples of content analysis. And I want to pause to see what other questions we have. Before I go into sort of the last couple of minutes, I want to just show you some more examples and uses, kind of very practical uses for government. Of how government agencies are using these different techniques. But let's see if we have questions or comments.
We do have a couple of questions. So we have one that is, are there any privacy implications to keep in mind when uploading documents, like, for example, a resume with personal identifiable information with it? And I just want to say I appreciate everyone engaging with each other in the chat. So folks have already given their input into this, but Beth, just curious your take on this question.
Well, I'm curious what people have said. And again, I think next time we should do this as a longer conversation to have as much time as possible for all these questions. I would say that for sure, when it comes to other people's information, personally identifiable information of other people, if you're a public servant here and you are in possession of some kind of personally identifiable information, you should not be putting it into these tools. Full stop. If you want to put your own resume in here, be my guest. That's your decision. It's your resume and it's your stuff. I would do it. I would have no problem with it. Doesn't bother me. But again, you have to draw the distinction between your own information and other people's information. I do think that for the most part, these tools, again, are, and it depends on which ones we're talking about, the more responsible and reliable ones, and especially after we're going to see some more regulation and control being put in place from the National Institutes of Standards and Technology over the course of the coming months. I think we're going to see better security and privacy controls. The more reputable of these tools, I think, will have strong privacy protections, but everybody and their grandmother now is advertising a generative AI tool, and I would be careful about the products that you're using, and I would definitely not take liberties with other people's information.
Thanks. And I just want to recognize that we do have a few questions on privacy and bias, and we're going to be planning to do a workshop entirely on that in the new year. So stay tuned for that. We'll be sending information out when we have it, but this is, a big issue that people often ask questions around. So we will be providing more content on that. Beth, if I can ask put one more question to you for now, which is, can we use ChatGPT audible to written content and then transport into an Excel sheet given specific column names?
I almost followed that, but yes, I used it So yes, when you speak, when you use the multimodal, when you use it on your phone and you talk at it, it transcribes in the same way that now I'm sure many of you are used to dictating your text messages or dictating your emails on your phone. It will transcribe and it will give you the answer, both it will speak it to you and it will write it down. You can then export that content. I just did something actually yesterday where I gave ChatGPT a document that had multiple columns. I'm trying to think about what it did. And I asked it, it actually gave me instructions for how to export my data from my table. It then analyzed my data and then I put it in an Excel spreadsheet. Google's tools are much better now. Google is trying to kind of build these things into its existing platform. So it tends to be really good about like moving things between Google Bard, Google Docs, Google Sheets. It's trying to keep you inside their environment because they have all those tools. I think Microsoft is going to be, you're going to see a lot more of that as Copilot rolls out and as Microsoft tries to create a seamless sort of interface between ChatGPT, Microsoft Word, Excel, and its other platforms. I think we're gonna find AI more and more just sort of part of the platforms that we're used to, rather than going to a ChatGPT separately.
Thank you.
I see yeah.
Yes. Do we? So one more for now, and also I will take this opportunity to put the link in the chat to our feedback survey and ask that you all take 1 minute after the session to fill it out. It really helps us to hear how we're doing and what you'd like to see coming up. It's a very short survey, so please click on that link so you can fill it out later. And I will also be sending that out with the slides and recording to everyone after the session. But for now, Beth, one more question, which is, could the work of AI actually present plagiarized writing?
Could it present plagiarized writing? So might you see a phrase or a line from ChatGPT or from Bard that comes from another website or that bears similarity to what someone else has written? Absolutely, because it's being trained, right? We're inputting a lot of information, it's digesting that information, and it's repeating it back to you. So I don't think you're going to see, because of just the number of permutations that are possible, I don't think you're going to see like whole paragraphs of identical text that's coming back to you. But I think it's always a good idea with any content. One of the things you can do is you can say to ChatGPT, paraphrase this for me or rewrite this for me a different way. So you can get it to rewrite something for you 3 or 4 different ways. And then you can pick the version of content that seems right to you. So I don't think you'll be at risk of kind of just seeing a whole novel regurgitated back to you exactly as it was. But again, it's going to depend on what you're asking. And if you're asking it for somebody's bio, you're going to get basically what it's pulling from Wikipedia or maybe from a couple of other sources, and it will repeat some information. If you're asking it for information that's largely pulling from a handful of sources, it will repeat a lot of that information. So it's always a good idea, I think, to use the ability to paraphrase as a way to ensure that you are using original content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you 2 or 3 last things here before we close out, and we'll get you out of here on time. Translation is an incredibly powerful example here. And that's not just Google Translate. Meta, the company formerly known as Facebook, has an open source set of tools called Seamless M4T. They're free tools for translation. Whoops, I think I have it. Oh, I had another picture of it somewhere. Well, anyway, this tool, which you can find online for free, will translate into and out of 100 languages in text and 35 languages in speech, and it will go between speech and text. And it's trained on hundreds and hundreds of hours, depending on the language, hundreds of hours of spoken language. So the translations, from what I've seen and what I've heard from other people, are incredibly high quality. and just it has a vast array of languages. So you can see the ability then to translate documents, and then have a native speaker always check them, but it can really speed up that process of doing translation. If you want to dive a little deeper in terms of examples, and I'm happy to, or maybe Hannah, you could put the blog post. I did a blog post summarizing this on the Reboot Democracy website. State of California just a few weeks ago put out a report on benefits and risks of generative AI, and in it, they listed some examples. I have those on 2 slides, which I'll put here for you, and then we'll put the blog post in the chat that summarizes the report. They put here's sort of a dozen different examples of the way governments can then apply these techniques. So they range from the ability to do things like summarize meetings or do translation, which we talked about, but I think this idea of improving benefits uptake, simplifying forms so that it can be easier for people to apply. Here's some more examples that they give. Translate materials to improve accessibility, or to optimize resource allocation to improve sustainability. I'll leave this up there. We can also paste these examples into the chat. And again, I'll paste in the blog post so that you can see them. But I think these offer some good examples. And I'll give you one more that students of mine are working on that I'm really excited about. And it uses that seamless M4T as well as ChatGPT. It's a project we called the AI EP. We are enabling, the students are the project that they've built for a partner called Innovate Public Schools allows parents to upload their child's IEP, the individualized education program that 15 to 20% of kids in schools who have a disability have. That document, as many of you may know, is a 100-page PDF given to you by the school district. It can be really, really hard for people to parse. Imagine if you were low literacy or non-English speaking. Very powerful use case that now simple tools in a tool, again, built by students in the course of 1 semester, now it will summarize it for you, it will translate it for you, and help and allow you to ask questions just of that document. Tell me what this document says. You can ask it in Spanish. Tell me what my kid is entitled to. Tell me what are the accommodations that they're getting. Very, very powerful and a dramatically reduced cost to be able to do that. They're doing same class is doing a similar project where they are simplifying the form to apply for federal broadband benefits, making it easier for people to access those benefits. Right now, most people who are entitled to those benefits are leaving them unused and lying on the table. So let me stop there. I have a lot, there's the IEP. I have a lot of slides, by the way, about risks for our next conversation. We're going to do something on images and spend a lot of our time talking about risks. So if you want to come back next week and talk about privacy and discrimination and other things, that'll be a lot of our conversation next time. But for now, I'm going to stop the share and see if we have any last